Now, your own love for Dover Athletic, like mine, goes right back to the heyday, the Chris Kinnear era, late 80s, early 90s, obviously. Tell us the first time that you came up here as a supporter.
Yeah, I mean, I can't honestly remember what year it was, but I used to come up with my dad and stand in that stand behind the goal, and I always remember it was always so busy, wasn't it? It was, it was a really good place. I remember, I think I used to go to watch my love Wimbledon on Saturdays, and I seem to remember my memories are more coming up here on a midweek night, standing behind the goal, and that was in the days of Leroy Ambrose, Bert Davis, all them type of boys, and obviously John Husk was the chairman then. It was just a fantastic place to be. Absolutely brilliant memories.
Of course, there was 4,000 here for a league game against Bromsgrove Rovers. We just got pipped by them, actually. Do you remember going to that game?
I do. Yeah, I remember being squashed in that end there. Yeah, I just remember. I remember the excitement. I remember Chris bringing on sort of subs quite late on and really changing the game, with pace. I remember scoring, here a lot of goals, and like I say, absolutely brilliant memories, and that would be amazing to give kids of today their memories again.
Do you know what? One of the most gutting parts of my childhood was missing that Bromsgrove game, because actually I was working in a fish and chip shop peeling spuds that night. But so many good memories. I mean, that team was almost invincible. And I remember the season we went up, actually, and then obviously we signed players like David Leeworthy. It was a real buzz around the town, and that's what we kind of got to try and recreate, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And what I really remember of that it was pretty much the same team every week. I know football's moved on to a certain degree, but Chris had a lot of faith, for all my time with him, with the boys that he signed, and he just put the same team out. Had a great spirit amongst the boys, and I can't remember losing many here. I really can't. As a fan back in them days. Stability is really important. I think the club's had far too many players, over the past 3 or 4 seasons. But it's really important to get stability if we can, but obviously that's not easy.
So Chris built a spine of a team, didn't he? And that pretty much carried him through. I mean, he went up 2 divisions with pretty much, the core of the same players.
Yeah, I mean, Chris was, was a brilliant judge of character and player, the potential in the players. I always remember his boys always being huge. We always got really big boys. Really strong boys, really strong characters, and lads that just used to fight for each other. A real sort of team ethos, and that can be enough on its own.
And actually, there were some Flair players as well. I remember Nicky Dent. He scored an absolute beauty from the halfway line here. He just scored, actually, and their goalkeeper had the ump, and he had his arms on his shoulders, and he was sort of on the edge of his box, and from the kick-off, it broke to us, and Nicky Dent saw him off his line.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah,
what a goal!
I remember it. I think that was the first sort of halfway line goal that I'd seen. Obviously, there's been a few in the Premier League since, but Nicky Dent was definitely my first memory of someone scoring from the halfway line, which I was here for. Obviously, you do need to have, you got to have a bit of flair. You got to have people that can beat people 1v1. But if you can get a core of boys that what you're going to get week in, week out, and then sort of 3 or 4 boys that can make the difference. That's what sort of squad balance you're looking for.
No, I remember you here as a player. I was a young journalist at the time. I can't remember who you made your debut against, but it was certainly for Bill Williams. Bill Williams signed you. Just tell us about your early memories then.
Oh, it was tough. Yeah, I mean, I was looking back. I was fortunate for Bill to give me a chance. I'd come out of Crewe, come out of boys football, where you pass the ball sideways and backwards. You didn't even look to pass the ball forwards. But Bill obviously saw something in me. When I absolute great memories under Bill. I still laugh about some of the things that went on. He taught me a lot. He taught me a lot.
What's the biggest things he taught you?
Well, I spent a lot of my time on my arse. My dad used to tell me, when your dad tells you, you don't really listen, do you? And I remember, tackling on the floor and all that. I remember going in the change rooms when the change rooms were in that corner, in front of all the boys, the Strouts, all the strong men, and I was this little, scrawny little boy. And he said to me, "Jake, stand up." And I stood up, and he climbed me straight in the chest. I fell back, smashed my head on the wall, landed on the floor, and he went, "What you learned?" I went, "Stay on my feet." And whether it's right or wrong, obviously you couldn't get away with that these days. But I certainly, it was a lesson learned. That was that one. Another memory was he used to tell me to the first one, head the back of the centre forward's head. You don't head the ball, just head the back of his head. See whether he's up for it. I think I broke my nose a couple of times doing that, but done what Bill wanted back in the day. And then the other fond memory was I broke my toe, and I come up here because obviously I come up and watch it if I was injured anyway because I'm part of the squad. And Bill said to me, "How are you?" And I said, "No, my toe's killing me. I can't play." And he went, "You ever had a cortisone?" And I didn't even know what one was. And I went, "No." He goes, "Would you have one?" And I went, "Well, yeah, if you want me to." And I remember the doc and Bill putting a cortisone in my toe, and I had to tell my dad to bring my boots up when I played. It was tough back then. I felt my toe a little bit more in the morning, but that was part and parcel of it. I never dreamt that I would have played that day, but I think I done well that day, and I think we won, and good memories.
And of course, when you're a young player, you need to look up to experienced players. You need experienced players to help you through. Who were the sort of players in that dressing room that helped you, or you looked up to?
Well, I mean, Jimmy was a local lad, and I ended up getting very friendly with Jimmy and Rachel. We spent quite a bit of time out of football as well. So he was an ex-military man, an absolute machine of a man. I mean, he thinks he was the best player as well. He thinks he was the best passer. But I'll tell him now he wasn't. But I think he still thinks it. But an absolute machine. He'd literally run through a brick wall. I remember him scoring 4 goals here from centre midfield. Midfielder, great guy, great character, absolute leader. And then obviously the characters like Ricky Rayner, John Budden, Scott Daniels, Paul Hyde. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I was very fortunate to get an opportunity. Not many boys did, and obviously being a local boy was very rare back in the day.
I don't think Jimmy would mind me saying, he wasn't the most naturally gifted footballer.
Don't say that, Justin.
But sorry, Jimmy, but it just goes to show what hard work does, isn't it? And when you apply yourself, actually, you can make the most of what you've got. Yeah,
I mean, I knew that before coming here because I was brought up a Wimbledon fan. Me and my dad and family used to go to Plough Lane, so I was about in 87. 88, the year Wimbledon won the FA Cup, and it was clear and obvious that they weren't the best players, but the intimidation, the size, the passion, the spirit, it's just amazing how far that can take you. And I've obviously learnt that in the Chris Kinnear era, the Bill Williams era, and obviously with John Steele at Dagenham. So that's what I'm desperately trying to create. Whether you can create that this day and age, who knows? But that's definitely the route I want to go down.
So you played under Bill, and then I imagine you must have played for Neville, Southall, and Clive.
Yeah, Clive wasn't he? Clive was very good, very very good defensive coach. I learned so much from Clive. Defending outside the box and being nice and tight and compact. And Clive was brilliant with the boys. There was a YTS scheme up here at the time with people like Craig Cloak and all that. And I know, even now they speak really highly of Clive. And I've actually invited Clive back this Sunday.
Oh, lovely.
So hopefully the chairman's got some extra white wine in, and we can have, we can reminisce over memories and enjoy a glass of wine Sunday.
Of course, you left the club and went to Margate, I believe, and then you went on and had a career away from Dover. Just tell us a little bit, summing up your career away from Dover.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was here as a boy in the youth, and I was with people like Paul O'Brien. I remember Ernie was the manager. Les Hall was here for a bit. I can't remember in what sort of capacity, and Tom Terry was the physio. They were good memories. Richmond Donker playing in the reserves, and I've got fond memories. I can't really remember that much about it, but I remember fond memories. And then I was really fortunate to get an opportunity to do YTS at Crewe, and I spent 3 years away there. And when I look back, the boys that I was with, it was quite phenomenal. I always felt a little bit inferior because I wasn't as good as them.
Just name drop a few, Jake.
Well, like I said, I didn't. I was the type of player that got the ball back. I certainly wasn't a ball player, far from it. But the boys up there were so talented, and and I was in these circles, and I remember feeling, this is not going to be for me because I'm not as good as these boys. Little did I know that majority of them went on to play in the Premier League. So Danny Murphy was in the same year as me. I played in the FA Youth Cup with Danny.
What was he like?
He was a man. I remember him being a man, hairy chest at 16. He was playing the first team, a guy called Gareth Wally, who went on to play for Bradford. Rob Savage, who obviously now's we know all about Rob Savage. Lodged with a guy called Seth Johnson, who went on to play for Derby and Leeds. So Ashley Ward, all these boys were up there at the time. Neil Lennon, there's loads. I look back in the photos now. Quite phenomenal, really, what happened to their careers.
You say it's good to see Robbie Savage go full circle and actually go back into the lower leagues, because he's at Macclesfield, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just taken over, isn't he?
Yeah. What was he like as a youngster?
He got released from Man United. He was really insecure. He didn't actually get in Crewe's first team that much. He was like he is now. He hasn't really changed. Good character, good fun to be around. And he's done ever so well for himself. Obviously Wales, and now he's done full circle back in as Macclesfield manager, so that'll be an interesting one.
I suppose from those, looking at the career that those players had, they obviously had something. They obviously had skill, but they must have applied themselves to training and all the rest of it, or did all the right things off the pitch. Did you observe that? Did you sort of see that?
Yeah, I mean the facilities at Crewe. I think they made a sale. I can't remember who they sold a little bit before I got there. It might have been Rob Jones, I think, to Liverpool, and they spent that money in the infrastructure of the club with the training facilities. And like I say, the coaching that was there. Steve Holland, who's now Gareth Southgate's assistant, was my YTS coach.
Oh wow!
So I spent 3 years, and technically, an unbelievable. I mean, I think he was about 26, 27 at the time. Had to retire from football himself, and technically, Crewe was all about techniques, and which is so important to get into the youngsters. It's something that I feel that us, especially in this area, we don't do enough of. So, like I said to you, I knew from very early on that they were technically a lot better than I was, because obviously I went there at a later age. Brilliant memories.
And just talk us through the second half of your career, because obviously, as you say, you left here, you went to Margate.
Yeah, so obviously when I got released from Crewe, I come back here. And that was the first time I met the chairman. I met him because he lived in the same village that my parents lived at, and it was his suggestion to come down on trial. With Bill and Clive. So, I had 5 great years here. Learning my trade, really, learning proper football, I call it. 20 to 25, and I don't think I would have left. The only reason why I went is we got relegated, which was a really difficult period. The club changed hands, and I wanted to stay at the highest level I could, and I went to Margate, where I first bumped into Chris Kinnear. I know he tried to sign me previously. He tried to buy me actually from Dover, but obviously it's difficult doing business with our chairman, isn't it? So he never let me go. But I wouldn't have gone anyway. This was my club, but unfortunately we got relegated, and I found myself over Margate in the National League.
Yeah, and just tell us about Chris Kinnear playing for him.
Yeah, I mean, different, very, very different. What I noticed with Chris early on was all his teams, the atmosphere, the spirit amongst the boys. It was really, really relaxed. Really, really relaxed type of environment that you look at it, and that's where so many of the boys thrived. There wasn't tea. I talked to boys in his early days. I think there was a few teas being thrown and all that, but not in the time I worked with him. Very, very relaxed, an unbelievable manager.
Yeah, and very difficult to play against. I've spoken to managers. I mean, Danny Cowell is an example. You said he hated playing Chris's teams.
Yeah, I mean, it wound me up a little bit, obviously, because I was part of it, about the bad press that we got. I mean, I think a lot of it was jealousy. I really do. I mean, if you look at Klopp's teams with the way Liverpool played, the high press, the 3 up front, Chris was doing that long before anyone else. And the man-to-man marking, to a certain degree, it was extremely difficult to play against, extremely frustrating for teams. We just didn't let them breathe, and the pace and power, we used to sort of overpower and outrun teams, and pick up amazing victories all over the country.
And of course you played, I think, for a mutual friend of ours, John Steele, an absolute legend.
Yeah. So the story with John Steele was... I'll go back to the Margate. When I signed for Margate, obviously there was, like there still is now to this day, a big hope of an infrastructure of a brand new stadium. Our chairman here, Jim, was the chairman over there at the time, and he had a model built up of how it was going to be built, and it looked unbelievable. So I signed there, and I signed a 2-year deal, but I just had a sneaky suspicion in the back of my mind that is it going to happen? And I put a clause in my contract. I had a disastrous first season. I found it really hard to integrate into Chris's side because, like I said, they're such a tight-knit group, the boys that were over Margate. And I had that's the first sign of my back injury. I went to play for Middlesex Wanderers in Vietnam, and I literally didn't have a rest. So I played every game in the last season in the conference for Dover. Then I went to Vietnam, and I turned up to Margate, and my back wasn't quite right, and I really struggled first year. And then I had I done a lot better second year and really enjoyed my time there. Margate, unfortunately, were relegated, not by points, but because the ground wasn't up to scratch. So then I had another decision to make, and a guy called John Steele come on the phone. He was at Bristol Rovers at the time and asked me to go down to trial. And I remember going down to Bristol Stadium, Bath. What a beautiful place that was for my first time down there. And I felt I'd done really well in the trial, and I was really hopeful that this was my chance to be a full-time footballer for a great club like Bath. But although as much as John liked me, he wasn't the manager. A guy called Ray Graydon was the manager, and I didn't quite make it. And looking back, he was right, because I was always in that middle sort of. Was I centre half? Was I a centre midfielder? And I never really nailed any position. So. Then I come back, and John must have left there and become the Dagenham manager, and he rang me up and asked me to come in. And that was the best decision I ever made.
You had 3 years at Dagenham, and then of course you moved to Wimbledon.
Yeah, my time at Dagenham, I look back as the biggest highlight of my career, winning the National League. And not only that, the way we won it with 6 games to spare, but it wasn't won in the first season or the second. It was won in the third season. But what John done was recruited the right type of boys in the first season to be successful in the third season. I do feel that today's football is crazy. You almost got to be successful in your first season. But obviously John was a Dagenham boy, and they gave him. He'd won it previously with Barnet, so they obviously knew they knew they were comfortable with what he was doing. And he recruited the boys like Craig McCall-Smith, who went on to play for Brighton. And the difference in them with 6 to 8 months full-time training was immense, and great memories. And then obviously we were so successful, we went up to the Football League, but I was at the end of my career, and he wasn't taking me in the Football League. Why would he want a washed up old boy? So again, I got really lucky that I ended up playing for my boyhood club. AFC Wimbledon were formed, and I joined Wimbledon in the same league as we're in now. Under Terry Brown, who again had been very successful in non-league, and I didn't quite enjoy my time as Wimbledon as much as Wimbledon as I did Dagenham, but we had a lot of success and an absolute fantastic club.
And then of course after Wimbledon, you got a call out of the blue from an old friend.
Yeah, I was that difficult period as a footballer, but around 32, had quite a few sort of injuries. What am I going to do? I was living in Blackheath at the time, and I remember walking around the heath, and my phone rang, and it was I didn't have Chris's number at the time because it was probably a year or 6 years since I'd left Margate, and my phone rang, and it was Chris asking what I was doing. He said to me, "I'm thinking about going back to Margate. Would you fancy coming down?" And it was towards the end of the season. It wasn't the start of a new season, and I remember going down, meeting him just as you come in the ground, and he said to me, "Do you want to go and have a chat with the boys?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You didn't think I wanted you as a player, did you?" And so he literally retired me there and then on that conversation, which
nice.
Well, actually, looking back, it was the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
So I didn't end up being that journeyman. So yeah, that was the start of a really good relationship with Chris Kinnear.